I am Yumma Mudra, and I am going to offer a serial of videos alone and also with other people in English about Danza Duende Network. We want to create a structure of explanations about the philosophic and also about technical details of this project and of exercises, and regarding also many people who are part of the network and who are exploring this work on their own right. So I really invite all people to join in, maybe because you are interested to know about this work, maybe because you believe you could offer something to make this structure become more and more presentable and more available, because this is completely based on benevolent work, benevolent offerings, because we believe that it is very necessary nowadays to create means for people to enter deeply into their richness, their personal richness. And we also believe that working with your health, with the means of body, speech and mind, and creating more and more network of people who are able to join together with a motivation which is free from gain and free from fear of losing money or having more money, but really completely concentrated on the love for art and the love also for human qualities of taking care of the world, of taking care of life, of taking care of ourselves as being protectors of all beings, instead of maybe abusing from resources and abusing from animals, exactly the opposite. So this project has been created by myself in 2004. Since a few years I am in a permanent half retreat, so I'm mostly retired, but also communicating with the teachers and all the people that have been making this network exist. So now we are doing it in English, because maybe English is the language that more people can understand and share. But we will translate slowly all the videos, and then we will create also paperwork, books, and different materials that will come from this purpose of generating a structure of explanations by little videos on YouTube. So please come on YouTube to see these videos. It is Raji Mudra, and it is called #Masterclass Yumma. See you there. I hope you have a good, wonderful day. Hello, here is Yumma Mudra. This is the Masterclass Yumma A3, Danza Duende Network, and the title is Talk About Network. So first let's have a little moment for meditation. Just relax wherever you are. You don't have to change much. Just feel that your body posture allows you to let the breath circulate through the whole of the body as much as possible. Okay. So actually it was not scheduled that I would tape this video now, but I suddenly felt I was desiring to do so. So I'm absolutely not prepared. Okay, so anyway, this is the third one. So this is A. I'm going to explain you a little bit how it works, because as I'm working on this slowly, I start to realize more or less the best way, the most simple way to organize it. So these videos will come out always with a title, which is the hashtag Masterclass Yumma, and then will come A or B or C. So the A is all these videos now talking more about the structure and the choreographic aspect, which is the philosophy of dance, by the dance. So how was built this project, how it works, and how you can understand the project, because it is a very difficult work to talk about, because it does get into the whole of your life and everything you think, everything you do, everything you feel, how you move, how you react, your emotions. So it's very difficult to explain. So we created a kind of a structure that allows people at least to understand what the structure is about, and then also what this project is not. I will come to that in another video. So you understand at least that it's not this or not that, and which makes it easier because it's so rich and you can create so much in the container of the project, really respecting the foundations of the project and also using the tools in order to develop the consciousness of the movement coming together with spontaneity that is built, like a kind of letting go of certain habits, that the habits have a condition that maybe you want to make more free, how you feel about unlimited space, unlimited time inside of the limitation of space and time, as I already talked about. And so in order to do that, each movement means to be free from certain habits, which are very often also emotional and mental habits, so that it can open up to a new other habit that would be much more broad, much more opened. What do I mean by that? I mean that in that case the movement gets used to bring you back to join the limitations of time and space and all that is happening in the material situation, and in the same time the root of what is going on comes from the unlimited, non-formal emptiness, which includes all the seeds of life and creation. Okay. So it looks a little bit, when we talk, it looks a little bit complicated, but actually it's very simple. That this is like when you look at a child dancing, you can see how the child can have suddenly, maybe some children, they really have this thing, they come and something comes from them, and it's very directly rooted into the unlimited sense of being, but it is in the same time in the limitation of how my body is and how the environment is at that moment. So the opening of the habit is that maybe we got trained into a mindset that comes automatically with your movement, because when you repeated the training of whatever it is you have been learning or whoever has been teaching, maybe something got inside of the system that pops out. That is not necessarily a problem, but maybe it does create a sense for, I can give an example, the sense of trying to reach something, you know. So when you're trying to reach something, your openness is not completely free and blissful, because you are trying to get somewhere. Or maybe you could have a habit. It can happen a lot when we look in the mirror at what we're doing about me and others and me, how my form looks like. Is it beautiful? Is it not beautiful? And then comes a whole of a mindset that will come together with that. And maybe you're dancing and you're free from this mindset, but it comes back to you suddenly in that little second that you lost the presence, you know. And there's no way to, if you're like on stage and that you're completely in improvisation, there's no way that this cannot cut the presence, even if it's just a little cut, it will cut. So it's not that you don't want ever to have these cuts of presence, but you need to create a mindset that relaxes with these things happening inside of your mind as you are, for example, this is the example, on stage. So this habit of letting go of the mindset comes together with the movement because you got used to it. Okay, so this is a little bit to reference to what we have been talking about. Why are the tools? Why are the trainings? What are they for? They're for many, many, many things. But at the end, the basic things comes back to the most simple. And the network. So I talked about dance in the A video, A1. This is the A2 was Duende. This is the A3. We will come later to B and C, but anyway, if you like to know, B will be about tools themselves, so they will be like explained, basically, not completely everything, but maybe sometimes we can show, and maybe it won't always be myself, maybe some other people will join in the B, and the C will be basically other people talking about their own work in the Danza Duende Network as a network and how they have been involving in this. Regarding the 5 wisdoms, it will be mostly based on this 5 wisdom that we could look at ourselves by the, like if you have a color, you would look at your own work in relationship with the aspect that would be related to earth, for example, and you could look at your own work and your own evolution in relationship with water, and that will be the process that we will be doing. So network. So in the beginning, when I started in 2004, actually I started much before, but in 2004 is the moment that I decided that I wanted to assume that my work as a dancer, as an artist, and as a teacher would get free from any kind of styles, that I could do any style. It's not about what my dance would be as a style, but it would be more how is it that the dance that I'm creating now, today, is relating to something essential, so that I have to recreate the style each time I'm dancing. And so this started to be very deep, because I understood at that moment that I did not desire, and I didn't have the means actually, because I have always been somebody traveling too much to keep people on my side all the time, the same people, that if I wanted them to really learn what I had inside of me, they would have to spend a lot of time and many years on my side all the time, because my formation came from youth, and I did study many, many kinds of dances and also many kinds of mind training. So at the point that maybe people were starting to work with me, I had already experiences about yoga, about meditation. At that time, it was not so much inside of the dance, these perspectives. So it was very new at that moment. And I also had a lot of experience in whirling, because I did whirling since I was young. And all the character dance, which is all the traditional dance that comes from the countries around Russia, from China to Turkey. So lots of styles of dance, plus, of course, the classical dance, and plus a lot of karate. I did until the black belt of karate, and qigong, and hatha yoga, and all the Tibetan Buddhism I have been studying very hard. I left school and home when I was 14, so I had a lot of time to do all that. I was full-time engaged in my own passions. And so I was not expecting that I would create a network. It just happened because I started to realize that it was very interesting what was happening among us when we were doing this training, that were not based on style, on reproduction of style, but more based on to give into each one of the students the tools that they could recreate on their own, their style in relationship with that specific work. So it depends what you're working on. So if you're making a creation that would be about something in your life that let's imagine that you want to do a creation about generosity and the goodness of generosity. So maybe all of this work you're going to do is going to also work on the opposite of generosity, and maybe you're going to sort out a way of moving, a way of feeling space and weight and volume in that dance that will be really in relationship with that topic in particular. So it makes that you can actually look very different from one dance to the other. And at that time, that did happen to me, that people thought I was a different person. I would come on stage again and again, changing my look and changing the dance, and people would even bet. They would make a bet between each other that this is the same person, and another person would say, oh no, this is not the same woman dancing. So this is the fruit of this kind of trainings. And as we were along doing all this work, I started to understand something very deep was happening among us, and that this relationship was very interesting to... It was very interesting to make it become a vision of society, because when we were all together in a space working on this dance and creating a quite kind space, what I mean by kind, it doesn't mean that you cannot have movements that could be a little bit violent or things, because it's art, you know. So when you're doing art, you should not try to look like something specific. You have to try many, many things. But the environment among the people in my classes used to be as much as possible an environment that everybody is doing our best to make it really deeply good for each other. So that's what we were really wanting to create. And actually inside of the workshops, I could notice that sometimes people would really get into a sense of, in the same time, space, in the same time, response to what's going on, in the same time, the capacity, the ability to share and to accept each other, and even to a little bit like melt into each other. And in the same time, I would always be careful that people, when they melt into each other, they would also have the capacity to take distance in the move of that creation at that moment. And so I thought it would be really interesting to introduce this training into a vision of society. And the basic thing about this was, you are the center of the action, and actually you are also somebody else's peripheral move. So somebody else is the center of an action, you're the center of an action, but there is a switch. In the same time you're the center, in the same time you're not. And sometimes somebody else really must be at the center, because that makes sense. And sometimes you must be at the center, maybe sometimes even you didn't really want to, but suddenly you have to be at the center, because suddenly you, it happens to be you, the one who is creating the center of all what's going on, and the other ones are going to become the periphery of your action. And so I thought this is very interesting, because it means that as human beings, we could use all of these tools in order to create. Maybe it will take a few generations, maybe it's not going to be easy at once, but maybe we could really create a liberation from the causes of suffering and how we create suffering thanks to these trainings. It could be a way to open up to a different vision of society, where I become a little bit able, I train myself into seeing when is it I have to take in charge, because it's the moment for me to take in charge. Like, for example, there's a fire in front of me, I'm the one, you know, it's not somebody else. Or maybe a child is just there and hurt himself, so I'm the one because I'm there, so I have to take in charge that action at that moment. Or maybe also because for the action to be so beautiful, I'm the one who really knows and can assume to do that thing that is needed, because it's so beautiful and I really have it. It's part of me, so I can do it at that moment and everybody will feel happy. So, on the other hand, it means that I'm also able not to always take over. That's what's difficult, as an artist. It's not that you are shy, neither that you are taking the space, everybody else's space. Is that you know how to make yourself retract a little bit from invading space and being at service of what somebody else is creating in the energy, or to take over the center of that energy, and that everybody is going to organize the situation in relationship with this thing that you are creating. So this was the basic thing. Of course, it involves many things that I will explain in the B, the section B, which will be about tools and trainings, more specifically. But something else happened in the same time that I didn't really analyze at that time, and now I have an opinion about that, is that internet started to become widely used, which was not the case when I started. And so, specifically that I was in Portugal, and then that time Portugal was always a little bit later than other countries, and so we didn't use internet and high cell phones that much, and it started to happen, and it came in the same time. So in the same time, internet was more and more what we use for organization, and it became like if our trainings were starting to be something that is very much network, just as we do on internet. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect is that I also thought that sometimes for my students it would be very interesting to learn something that somebody else knows better than I do, and so I would bring somebody else to do that. And slowly it became really interesting to see how much we could share, not that thing that each person gives his own teaching, but that actually we take the teachings of each other, we take the teachings of each other in order to have a synergy that is much stronger, because something happens when everybody learns what everybody else's do. It's very different from a situation where everybody comes on his own and tells his own thing, and then somebody else comes and tells his own thing, and then somebody else comes. It's nice, it's okay. But it's always subject-object, no? It's you and people listen to you, and then somebody else and people. But in this case, I thought if we have different teachers, they are teaching to each other, and then they are also teaching to the students, and then the students are teaching to each other. And so we're creating a situation where something can happen, and it does happen actually, that is much wiser and more intelligent than we are separated. Because it also happens when you have a group and you're doing something with a group, sometimes there is a real deep intelligence of the group that's happening, and it makes that each individual has much easier situation of learning than if that person would have been alone. So and there's specific techniques also for that. Like, I can give you a little example. If somebody has a hard time with everything that is a little bit more mathematic, and your right leg and your left leg, and to be in the same rhythm and to have the same arm as other people, when they are separated, that person does not manage to do it. Maybe she or he will have the left leg going up as the other people already did something else, or maybe we'll do the opposite, or maybe we'll always be out of rhythm. And so this is like an example. If you put these people in line and that they actually touch each other, like shoulders are against each other, they don't really have to hold hands, because you want their hands to be free for the movement, but they're a little bit very close. So you put them all, like maybe imagine it's 5 person, you put them like touching each one, the shoulders of the next, and that person is in the middle. And you don't have to tell you, it's better not to say anything, you just do it, and nobody knows that why you're doing it. You're just doing it for that person to have easiest time of learning. It becomes easier for that person in that situation. And so when they are a little bit touching each other, that person suddenly is able to do something that she could not do when she was not feeling somebody else on her side doing that very same thing. And so what happens when people are in synergy is that they bring about some kind of a mix of knowledge and intuition, and I think it's a link to the knowledge that is actually all pervasive, all in space. I think that's why we can do constellation work. I think in space, in the whole of space, all the knowledge is there. It's just that is it that you can switch there. And actually, you cannot switch there because you want. You can't switch there because you are available for that. And that your mind is not busy with something else. And I found out that when people were doing these things together for hours and hours, suddenly they started to come something that was so brilliant and so smart and so very much the best of human being that I really wanted to work on that as a perspective of living together, of living in society. And so this went very, very far, because at one point I actually thought, you know, when we are on stage, we have to work with conflict. We have to work with, because on stage conflict is really full of energy. So when you have a conflict, very often people like that. Actually, very often people are not very interesting in harmony. When you have on stage, everybody is happy in good harmony. The people who are looking at the show are not so, the public is not so attracted to that, unfortunately, no? You have to create some kind of intensity so that they will be interested in something that is contemplative, and maybe not everybody is able to look at contemplative work, but you have to create some kind of a strength in that case, because otherwise, if you're just relaxed and completely happy and completely in peace with everything, maybe they're going to find you completely boring. On the other hand, when people are in conflict, like in a theater piece, so it's so intense, and so we work with that. And I thought, why not, when we work together in real life and we have a problem, because you always end up having a problem with people, and that's something that we really, as human beings, I think, should get interested in, how much that is a rich material for us to evolve, to transform that, because somehow we have this intelligence in our body that allows us to transform the way we are, not because we have to be something different than what we are genuinely, but because we can let go of our habits. And if we let go of our habits, we see something changes, and maybe that person who annoys me becomes a person that is given to me the opportunity to go beyond. And if I can do that with the person I'm working with in for example, a project or something, if I'm able to have the courage to stick to this relationship that is difficult, but I'm going to go through it thanks to time, because time is actually, if you go through this thing in many, 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 many years, you start to understand that people that are enemies become friends, and people who are friends become enemies. People who loved you so much don't love you so much anymore. People who admire you, actually they hate you. So all these things you start to see when you get older, but when you're young, you don't receive the knowledge that you could actually use these things to make yourself go beyond these automatic love, hatred, attraction, retraction, all these things that we do automatically, and we don't even find how much this is related to war, and war, as it becomes really important, is destruction, it's bombs, it's a lot of pollution. I would call it pollution for the earth, pollution for life, pollution for minds, pollution for the emotional states of many generations, because the suffering of big wars, and wars are getting bigger and bigger with time, the suffering of these wars goes into generations. It doesn't go away. So of course we can do therapy, we can do so many things we can do. But I thought that in the midst of learning about art and using dance as this knowledge tool for getting into everything about the human body, everything about eyes, everything about ears, everything about nose, everything about mouth, taste, everything about touch, and then everything about mindfulness, everything about consciousness, everything about bones, everything about how to move, how not to move, how to cut the movement, how to make the movement completely flow, how to make the movement completely straight, how to make the movement completely full of tension, how to release the tension. So all these things we do, they have extension, because like the movement has extension into calligraphic, into painting, has extension into sculpture, have extension into geometry, into architecture. So dance has extension into rhythm, of course, your heartbeat, your health, your medicine, but also music, which has a lot to do one with the other. So how the music is there, because actually you start to understand that music is part of you. It came out of people. It's not something that was there. And of course you have the music of trees, of course. But what human beings do as music, if you start to see, I don't know, Tchaikovsky and great musicians, or Nusrat Ali Khan, all these things are completely human. But actually we have them inside of us, and when we dance we can pop this out. So we have the music, we have the architecture, we have the mathematics, but we have also the complete chaos, and we have the emotional possibility to work with what comes when, if in my dance I become like this, I can work on that thing I have, and I can have it, show it, give it, but not identify with it. So I don't have anymore to be that angry person all the time, because I learn how to relax with these energies, because it's energy. It's not something stiff. I think it's stiff because I got used to identify with that thing that is in habit. So as a collective, it's much easier, because on one hand you need a lonely process. And on the other hand, you really need each other. So it's like going from this loneliness, which is very important, because when you are able to work with yourself and to be lonely in the process of art, you are able to meet the other persons and not to lean on the other persons, to be too much dependent on these people, or the opposite. You also maybe can learn to know about yourself, and that at one point maybe you don't let the other lean on too much on you. And all of this knowledge and wisdom is part of the situations. It's just there. So I thought this is really great, and of course it was a little bit difficult to create that vision, because even though people would really love the vision, they would think this vision is really incredible, the time was early for it. I think it was a premonition of something that we're going to learn how to be in the future. So it was very, very difficult. And so I also understood that we should create these camps of wisdom and let them dissolve. So this is how it would work. Like, imagine, the Danza Duende, imagine, would like interest very much 500 person, for example. And inside of these 500 person, at one point we have 20 person who want to do something together. So the 500 person, they can sustain the container, but just let it be, just relax, because there's not, this project is not about earning money, and it doesn't have any castle, it doesn't have any production of things. Everybody does his own stuff, what they want, everybody's free. It's really like anarchy, it's an anarchist organization. There's nothing there that is institution. Excuse me for my English. And But there is a sense of a collective, like imagine 500 people are sustaining the container, they feel the container is something that they appreciate its existence, even if they're doing something else. And then 20% there are really doing it, something together. And even if they have a hardship, they're going to use the tools to work on their hardship if it happens, and they're going to do their best to make that thing happen. And of course, then you will see, what happens, because the sense of leadership or not leadership, like even if you don't want people to take leadership, then most of the group wants a leadership. And if you have a lot of people who want to be leadership, they don't go along together. And all this is wisdom. All this is what we look into, because it's a dance, And how can you give to society this? Because as you're not in an institution and as you're not in something that is fixed, you enter society by your children. You enter society by the things you say, by the things you are. What you are changes. Actually, at that time, a lot of students came to me because they saw somebody change, and they asked that person, what is it you did that you look so great? Even sometimes I had the husbands of the wife come and tell me, I want to thank you because my wife is much better. She feels much better, things like that. And so relax about the fact that this will die. And that's also a difficult thing, because very often I have acknowledged that people were getting into something and they would never let it go. They would never stop it. Because actually this vision is very difficult to hold, and I think time is coming where it's going to be a little bit more easy to understand nowadays. Maybe. We'll see. So I hope this explanation is helpful. So Danza was about the fact that you dance your life, and your life as a dance is always the opportunity to be present, and to be present in two basic kinds of awareness. One is the infinity of space and time in the feeling of being, which is something that we really have in the secret of ourselves. It's most of what we live. It's the secret sense of non-ending being, like we feel it maybe in the morning, in the night, sometimes when we're afraid. It's overwhelming, but sometimes it's so wonderful. It can, depends if you feel it with the light or in the dark of yourself. But also at the same time getting skillful with limitations of space, of geometric. There's a door, there's no door, there's a wall, there's an object, no object. How can I dance with the object? How the object induces in me a feeling of its weight, of its sensation. So all of this limitation in space and time also. So how is it my heartbeat and the music, or the not music, the breath, how is it they together give life to something? And so this is how form is emptiness, emptiness is form, and form is not anything else than emptiness, and emptiness is not anything else than form, which is the very known sutra of the Buddha, Shakyamuni. And in this case, we feel these things, and it's why it's so difficult to explain them, because they become part of how we live. Because when we start to get in this process, it's so strongly present that it becomes something that we always kind of feel, and sometimes we get even lost, because sometimes when you open a little bit more to the infinity, maybe you get a little bit dizzy, or lost. And when you open a lot to how much the mathematic can give you a rhythm and a direction, maybe you get in trance of that and you see nothing else. And so you learn about yourself, because you can go from one to the other. And then you can find that actually you can find a place there, like inspiration, expiration, If inspiration, expiration, you can find a place there where it's not anymore stuck. It starts to be flexible. Your being becomes flexible. So that's the dance. The duende is the magic that happens. It doesn't happen because you want to, it doesn't happen because you ordered it, it just happens because the situation and yourself are available for that magic. And that magic is so powerful that it opens the heart of people. Everybody's heart gets open with that. And for that duende to happen, there's a lot of situations, and actually the first step in the Danza Duende was to work on suffering. That's the first step, so that I will explain in another video. And then network is how this network started to be created because of all these things I just explained, which is the discovery that when we are not attached to a single style and we're not reproducing always the same ways, that we are always in a creative composition, because I like composition. It's not only improvisation, it's not therapy in this sense. There is a therapeutic happen, but it's not like therapy or like completely free. It's free and in the same time finding composition. This is the first thing I discovered the network would be interested because of what was happening. Why don't we extend that to our daily lives? Why would we do it only in the studio? And then the other aspect was inviting other people who know better than me. And then the other aspect was, how can I let go of being the center and letting somebody else be the center of my action? So I would be at service, but how at one point I have to take the center and that person will learn how to be at the service of my action, because this is what is needed for everybody. So this is also wisdom that is part of space and time, and that we could find as a training to develop our society in completely different ways, because it's not a theory, it's something you feel. And so the third aspect that happened that made the network happen was internet, the beginning of machines and internet. And that's very interesting because all these machines have to do with the kind of quantic physics that we did not have before. And so the whole mindset that came from the physical related to gravity and to all that humankind discovered with machines until we get to Einstein. And then after Einstein, and in the same time of Einstein, we have another discovery of this infinity, that if we go in the smaller, you find nothing. There's everything and nothing. It's very weird, no? Something is there, but it's there in the same time. So if you get interested into quantic energy, you start to see that actually life is not about that someone is a predator of somebody else and that the nature is always the strongest is going to win. It's not really like that, because what these people on Earth, these animals are made of, is actually working in a kind of another set of how life has to do with consciousness. Right? So when I am observing something as a scientist, I have a kind of relationship with what I observe, and actually what I observe will happen in relationship to the fact that I'm observing. It's not completely independent. There's not something there and someone there. There is maybe this atom is going to become more an atom or more an undulation in relationship to the who is observing. So I'm not a scientist, I'm not going to get into that, but I like to observe that as a humankind, as this project of mine happened in the same time, it has to do with the meeting of these two kinds of technologic. And I think very much that nowadays we need to concentrate as human to catch up, that our consciousness catches up to that technologic. So this is really why there's a network. It's more laboratory than some kind of a belief. It's something that you have to experience and to look into it, so that we together create that knowledge. How, as a network, we are always artists. if we put it too much into systems and too much into how you say this, that you do this and then you do that and then it's a system actually, methodology. If it's too much like that, you lose the fact that there is something always surprising that is supposed to put upside down what you thought was the whole truth. That's why art is really the best. What you thought was the truth is upside down, and suddenly your head is down and your feet are up. And so you always need that openness of the beginner mind. You really need. That's why my project ended with the beginner mind. At that time, that's how it had the name. I will explain that also in another video. So this is it. So I explained Danza, I explained Duende, and I explained network. And so in the next video, we will get more into the philosophic, which we call choreographic, of this network, and also of the tools, and also the history of this project, as far as I'm concerned, but also as it did start to be manifested by many, many different people in different countries. That will be also the section C. Bye-bye.